Y'all know what it is.
Well, so they already have fleets of taxis and city buses and all sorts of different vehicles that are running on hydrogen. And the cost of producing the hydrogen right now is fairly expensive. So it's cost per gallon of gas, for example, is cheaper than a gallon of or liter of hydrogen. So by having the tech become more prevalent, more people producing it, I assume that's going to go down. A lot of the problems as far as like creating and storing hydrogen comes in like there's no systems in place right now for gas stations to be able to store it, the transporting of the hydrogen to get to the gas station. I've heard a lot of the gas stations that have the hydrogen capability right now are producing it on site.
That's right.
Is that going to be kind of the model? Are most of the places that are going to be able to provide hydrogen solutions for consumers, are they going to essentially just have to create their own process of making it and storing it on site?
That's actually a brilliant question. So currently there are 3 different types of hydrogen stations for vehicles. And they're basically broken down into some stations where it's delivered by a pipeline. They've built a station near a hydrogen pipeline that happens to be nearby. They've tapped it off, purify the hydrogen. That's the kind of best case scenario because somebody's already paid for the infrastructure. There's other ones where it's delivered as compressed gas. I led a modeling effort a while ago to look at the economics of that. So for the first 150 miles, maybe, it's kind of economic to deliver it by truck and have it, shipped in. But beyond that, then electrolysis tends to be the cheapest way to, produce it on site, really. And with the cost of on-site production coming down, then the window of attractiveness for delivered hydrogen starts to shrink. So there's always going to be some hydrogen delivered, but it looks more and more likely that a lot of it will be produced on site via electrolysis, and in some cases you can produce it on site through natural gas reforming as well. So there's a couple of options there.
So what do you think?
Oh, go ahead, Ryan.
Go ahead. I was just going to say, so what do you think? I mean, how do we make this attractive to the big fuel companies, for example? I mean, not to ask you to give any like inside dirt on Shell's thinking or anything, but like, if I'm, running a chain of gas stations or, something like that, when will I know, or are there things we can do to expedite the demand for this product? I mean, obviously, if it's physically capable to produce on site, that's one hurdle. But the other hurdle is if I'm going to invest in all that infrastructure, how do I make sure I've got enough of a crowd to buy it? So like, what do you think that transition looks like?
His father actually owns a truck stop. So he's wanting some inside information for his dad.
I could probably recommend after this some providers of equipment if your dad's interested.
Excellent.
But so it comes down to cost, right? Nobody wants to spend a huge amount of money putting this infrastructure in the ground, and nearly every hydrogen refueling site now, there's some level of funding through either through say California government or the German government or UK funding in various countries. None of these sites are paying for themselves, and the reason they're not paying for themselves is they were expensive to put in. These days they're becoming more and more similar, so the cost is coming down, which is great, but it comes down to demand. So if you have a station that's only dispensing 5% of the amount of hydrogen it could per day, you're never going to pay for it. If you've got a station that's got 95% utilization, you start to make some money on that. So it does come down to utilization. It comes down to knowing where the vehicles are going to go in and knowing which vehicles are going to use a lot of fuel. So your normal car, you got your Camry or something. If they decide to go over to hydrogen, fuel cells on that, or you have a Toyota Mirai, still not going to use much fuel unless it's being used as a taxi. But if you're doing haulage, you've got a Class 8 truck, and these are blasting up and down the freeway continuously, they will burn a lot of fuel. And that can be diesel, or it can be hydrogen, or it can be something else. And they'll need to refuel. So the best idea is to put these hydrogen refueling stations where there will be high demand. And that means working with these truck companies to say, look, if you go over to hydrogen, we may even put a refueling station at your depot where your trucks go overnight, so you don't have to worry about that. But show us what your main routes are. You know, we're going on this highway. Where do you normally want to refuel? And we will put in refueling stations along there. And then suddenly you start to develop hubs, and kind of a hub and spoke model. And it encourages other companies who maybe only have a couple of trucks to get involved because they know they can refuel too. That increases your profitability. You can put in more stations. More stations means the cost of stations gets cheaper. So that's really how I see the kind of profitability coming up and the cost going down.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, because I mean, it's kind of this chicken and the egg thing, right? You don't want to just build stations when there's no demand, but you know, we need the chickens to start running on hydrogen, and so that they can, so they need it.
Ryan,
so it makes sense to do it in private ventures like that.
Ryan, if you think like 10, 15 years ago, there weren't charging stations for your Tesla at every super mall or gas stations or, you know, along the major corridors. But now if you drive, you know, from Idaho to Washington, there's, you know, fuel charging stations all along that route because the demand is there. So it's worth the investment. And I honestly see the same thing happening with hydrogen in the next 10 years. The same kind of, you know, the cars are going to start showing up and they're going to be out there and there's going to be a demand for it. And then at that point is when you're going to start seeing them pop up.